now I would like to move to the next session, the session dedicated to 90 years of Professor Naim Afgan. Professor Naim Afgan was born in Banja Luka in Bosnia and Herzegovina in 1929. He went to study to Zagreb, then he went to work to Belgrade, and finally, after his retirement, he went to work to Lisbon. And in this process, he has connected our institutions, which are all co-organizing this conference, and has contributed to research in all these institutions. And we will hear in this session his colleagues talking about their experience with his great scientific life. My own personal experience was that I worked for 8 years with Professor Naim Afgan in Lisbon, Instituto Superior Técnico, in the group of Professora Maria Graça Carvalho. And it was a really excellent experience. Professor Afgan was always coming with new ideas. New ideas are extremely important in research because this is what makes the research go on. Of course, we need also PhD students who are going to calculate that, prove those ideas or disapprove them sometimes. But the critical thing was to have such leading people who will break ice with completely new concepts and new ways how to use previous knowledge. I was at that time a small PhD student who was calculating those ideas, but I was always amazed how Professor Afgan was just coming out during afternoon coffee or a walk we had with completely brilliant new ideas how to improve the world. I would like to invite now Professor Predrag Stefanovic, his colleague from Vinča Institute, where he worked for many years, to give his address dedicated to Professor Naim Afgan. Peja, are you here with us?
Do you hear me?
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to participate in this session devoted to 90 years of Professor Naim Afgan. So, Professor Naim Afgan graduated at University of Belgrade, Faculty of Mechanical Engineering and Naval Architecture in 1956. Next year, he joined the nuclear research program at the Boris Kidrić Institute of Nuclear Sciences in Vinča. Officially, he finished work at the institute in Vinča at the end of March 1993, and that year retired and went abroad. But he was always in contact and had cooperation with colleagues from his initial basic research organization, Laboratory for Thermal Engineering and Energy in the Institute of Nuclear Sciences, Vinča. Professor Naim Afgan belonged to the first generation of the researchers engineers in the institute dealing with heat and mass transfer, which established in 1961 a laboratory for reactor thermal engineering, formulated research programs during the nuclear program in former Yugoslavia, lead the research project, and educated the next generation of researchers. With his hard work and internationally recognized results, he highly contributed to the successful development of the laboratory, its international cooperation, its international reputation, and especially to the advanced education of young researchers. His scientific work in Institute Vinča can be grouped in few research area of primary interest, but as a leading researcher with wide knowledge and experience, he was usually involved simultaneously in different projects. Initially, his research was focused on processes in water-cooled nuclear reactors, later in steam generators, especially on problems of heat and mass transfer in boiling liquid and two-phase flow, liquid vapor flows. This fundamental knowledge and experience was excellent base for applied research and studies that Professor Afgan led in later periods. In period from 1973 up to 1986, his research was focused on problems and processes in coal-fired steam boilers of thermal power plants, especially on problems of ash lagging and falling of coal-fired power plants. In period from 80 to 1993, his research, besides heat transfer in the boiling processes, thermal and hydraulic problems of steam generators and nuclear reactors, was focused on nuclear power generation problems, including thermodynamic and hydrodynamic aspects of nuclear reactor safety and strategy of nuclear fuel cycle. After 2006, although he was already retired and came back permanently to Belgrade, he continued the supervision of research activities of young scientists in his basic institution, Laboratory for Thermal Engineering and Energy of the Institute Vinča, on sustainability problems of energy environmental systems. Professor Afgan started work at the Boris Institute of Nuclear Sciences as a member of supervision team for the erection of the research reactor at nominal power, 6.5 megawatts, both from from the SSSR, and completed in 1959. During 1960-61, he was a guest research fellow at the Nuclear Reactor Department of Argonne National Laboratory in the United States on heat and mass transfer problems of liquid boiling processes. Based on this experience with a group of young engineers in the Institute Vinča, wide research program was determined, advanced experimental instrumentation was obtained, and different experimental installations were built. Based on this research, in 1965, he made a PhD thesis at the alcohol benzyl mixture boiling heat transfer and heat flux crisis at the School of Electrical Engineering, Belgrade University. But few more PhD and master theses were done also in the following years under his supervision, and many papers in international journals were published. Advanced research results on heat and mass transfer problems of liquid boiling processes generated in the Institute Vinča were base for the chapter Boiling Liquid Superheat, which Professor Naim Afgan published in Advance in Heat Transfer in 1965, and for which he obtained October Scientific Award of the town Belgrade in 1976. Here are some listed some PhD theses in heat and mass transfer in boiling liquid and two-phase flow, revised by Professor Naim Afgan. Next are master theses, also supervised by Professor Naim Afgan. A list was huge. And here are only top published papers on heat and mass transfer in boiling liquids in two-phase flows. At the end of the 60s, transformation of the research program at the Boris Kidrich Institute was started. As at the Yugoslav level, nuclear program was changed. And at that critical period, Professor Naim Afgan with a group of young researchers gave important contribution to the new research program that was formulated in 1972 in the Laboratory for Thermal Engineering and Energy. He, with a group of younger researchers in the laboratory, formulated, organized, and realized applied research devoted to solving numerous processes, problems in newly built coal-fired thermal power plant all over former Yugoslavia, especially problems of ash falling and slagging on coal-fired boilers, Under the leadership of Professor Naim Afgan and Dr. Ljubomir Jovanović, long-term research of slagging and falling processes, that is the formation of deposits on heating surfaces in coal-fired boilers, and simultaneously research of the physical, chemical properties and transformation of mineral part of coal were organized for the need of electric power companies in former Yugoslavia. In the Laboratory for Thermal Engineering and Energy, appropriate measurement methods for testing in real operation conditions in furnaces and boilers at thermal power plants and in the laboratory have been developed. And based on a series of measurements on site performed with Yugoslav lignite and other coals, criteria for assessing the tendency of ash to form deposits have been established, and influence of operating parameters like gas temperature and heat flux on the rate of formation of deposits have been determined. Recommendations have been determined for the selection first, the type and concept of the furnace boiler based on the ash characteristics of the domestic coals, lignites, and secondly, critical values of the furnace parameters, temperature at the outlet of the furnace, volumetric and surface heat loads corresponding to the characteristics of the coal intended for the combustion. Here are listed PhD theses supervised by Professor Afgan, and also master thesis in that research area. Also some published papers on slagging and falling problems. Taking into account the problem of service life extension and the need for modernization of existing power plants, Serbian electric power industry started financing an extensive study in the middle of the 1980s with the aim of determining methodology and procedures for determining the current state conditions of the installed metal in boiler units and determining the remaining service life of vital boiler elements. Professor Naim Afgan, as a project leader, organized international meetings and cooperation with top European experts in this field, which enabled the definition of advanced methodology and its application to thermal power plant units in the region. This applied research combined with the knowledge of two-phase flow of boiling water in the furnace screen pipes gave also a clear picture of the conditions and causes of frequent steam pipe failures, which increase operation cost and decrease of production and availability of thermal power plants. These are published papers on exploitation problems of boiler, including this study on exploitation control of metals, of high temperature parts in steam boilers. Taking into account the problem of service life extension and need for modernization of existing power plant. Sorry, this is a previous slide. Research activities of the Professor Naim Afgan in the Institute Vinča in the 1980s included heat transfer in boiling processes, thermal and hydraulic problems of steam generators, and nuclear reactor strategy of nuclear fuel cycles. Here are noted only two most important scientific books, monographs. First is a monograph published by Boris Kidrich Institute in 1981. And the second is a book, Nuclear Power Plants, authors Professor Afgan and Professor Maurizio Cuomo, published by the University of Rome, La Sapienza in 1994. Being successful scientific researcher, Professor Naim Afgan since 1970, elected as a full professor at Belgrade University, was also a great educator, humanist, and intellectual. As a magnet, brought together young students, engineers, and researchers, and selflessly assisted and directed them in research activities and their professional and scientific development. After return to Belgrade, Professor Afgan supervised 3 young researchers in the Institute Vinča for PhD thesis on sustainable development of energy systems. They are listed here. Professor Naim Afgan was one of the most active participants in foundation of the Yugoslav Society of Thermal Engineering in 1962. As a Deputy Secretary General of the Society, with colleagues from the Laboratory of Thermal Engineering and Energy, he organized in 1964 first Symposium of Thermal Engineering of Yugoslavia in Herceg Novi, and later in 1968, fourth symposium, but this time first with international participation. In spite of difficult political situation at that time in the world, due to Cold War and SSSR intervention in Czechoslovakia, but thanks to excellent personal relations and good international cooperation of Professor Zoran Zaric and Professor Naim Afgan with leading world experts in heat and mass transfer, symposium was very successful. 150 participants from 11 countries, including United States, Canada, England, France, SSSR, Germany, Italy, Switzerland, Sweden, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia, were present and enjoyed excellent organization and high quality presentation and discussion. At the end of the fourth symposium, representative of this symposium, international, representative of the Society of the Thermal Engineers proposed the establishment of the Forum International Center for Heat and Mass Transfer, with the aim to promote scientific cooperation and organize international scientific meetings on different subjects, problems in heat and mass transfer. This proposal was supported by present leading world experts and later officially accepted by the French Society of Thermal Engineering, American Society of Mechanical and Chemical Engineers and scientific organizations from other countries, including sponsorship by UNESCO since 1970. Officially, International Center for Heat and Mass Transfer was located in the Institute in Vinča and led by Professor Zoran Zaric as General Secretary up to 1985, and Professor Naim Afgan as Scientific Secretary in that period, and later as General Secretary. In period from 1968 to 1993, International Center for Heat and Mass Transfer organized 47 international scientific events, meetings, proceedings published by the world-leading publishing companies, mostly edited by Professor Naim Afgan, are still among the best archive scientific publications. Literature for the related area of heat and mass transfer. Scientific community in the Institute of Nuclear Sciences, Vinča, are thankful to Professor Naim Afgan for his contribution to organization and realization of many high-quality fundamental and applied research, to the successful development of the Laboratory for Thermal Engineering and Energy, to its international cooperation, to its international reputation, and especially to the advanced education of young researchers. Here are the list, as appendix to this presentation is the list of all 47 meetings and the proceedings from these meetings. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Predrag. Now we will have another address. As probably some of you know, Professor Naim Afgan was one of the founders of SDEWES Conference Series. And he was also a very significant person in International Center for Heat and Mass Transfer. And I would like to now ask Professor Kemal Hanjalic, who was also one of the founders of SDEWES Conference Series, to give his address on his experiences with Professor Afgan. Please.
Dear colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to address the respectable audience of this, I would say, Jubilee Conference on Sustainable Developments of Energy, Water and Environmental Systems. I am particularly pleased that the opening session is dedicated to late Professor Naim Afgan, a member of the Academy of Sciences and Arts of Bosnia and Herzegovina, a native of Bosnia, born in Banja Luka, and the founder of SDEWES. Naim will be remembered by many as one of the pioneers and doyens in the sustainability and resilience concepts in the region of former Yugoslavia. And I feel also happy that this event is held, at least formally, in my native city of Sarajevo, though sadly only virtually, under the exceptional circumstances which prevented many participants from being physically present. I said it's a Jubilee event, we may say, SDEWES 20+20, because this conference was inaugurated almost precisely 20 years ago at a meeting of few enthusiasts and activists in spring of 2000 in Dubrovnik. And This conference happens to be the 20th in the series under the same name. Over the past 2 decades, the conference has grown and evolved beyond any expectation at an amazing pace, justifying fully the initiation and proving that the organizers were really on the right track. The raison d'etre behind the topic of sustainability and the conference title, recognized as highly relevant and important already at that time, has remained uncontested until the present days. Much has been said about the utmost importance, threats, and urgency of ensuring the sustainability of our world, as we all know that infinite growth on a finite planet is not possible. But I will quote at least one wise thought summarizing the essence, strangely attributed to the French poet and philosopher Paul Valéry, who said, though in a different context, the future is not what it used to be. The SDEWES Conference Series has certainly increased the world awareness of the sustainability threats and contributed in various ways towards their mitigation. Because this is the 20th anniversary event, it might be appropriate to say a few words on how it all began and why in Dubrovnik. Dubrovnik has long been a favorite place for various gatherings, political, cultural, professional, scientific and others, but also it was a traditional venue for hosting conferences and events organized by the International Center for Heat and Mass Transfer, which in fact triggered the idea to begin with the SDEWES events. The ICHMT was founded in 1968 in the Nuclear Institute Boris Kidlic in Vinča near Belgrade to serve as a neutral platform for meeting of scientists from East and West in the midst of the Cold War in late 50s and 60s, early 60s in last century. At that time, two emerging technologies, the nuclear energy and space exploration, were both faced with enormous problems of extracting and managing huge amount of heat. American, British and French scientists on one side and Russian on the other were researching the problem intensively but with almost no direct communication. Some visionaries in the Vinča Institute, led by Naim Afgan and late Zoran Zaric, came to the idea of bringing the two parties to a neutral terrain, the non-allied Yugoslavia. Supported by a number of distinguished personalities of the time from both parts of the world, they founded an organization under the name of International Center for Heat and Mass Transfer, ICHMT, with Zoran Zaric as the Secretary General and Naim Afgan as the Scientific Secretary. The first two conferences were held in Herzegovina, in Montenegro in 1968 and 1969, but the venue moved soon to Dubrovnik, which subsequently hosted dozens of meetings of various kinds and levels, conferences, seminars, summer schools. The war in former Yugoslavia in 1990 broke that activity, and the center was moved in 1993 to the Middle East Technical University in Ankara, where it still operates. As said, the idea for this event, though not exactly on the present topic, was born among the functionaries of the ICHMT. Some may ask, what is H&MT, or heat and mass transfer, to do with sustainability? Well, I'm sure many of you will find the connection. As heat, mass and momentum transport is in the core of most processes of energy conversion, water management, and environment protection. In 1999, at a meeting of the Executive Committee of ICHMT, I was asked about the situation in the post-war Croatia and of the prospects for reviving the tradition of organizing some meetings in Dubrovnik. I communicated here with Naim Afgan in Belgrade, who recommended to contact Professor Željko Bogdan from Zagreb. With few colleagues, among whom I remember Professor Ores Fabris from Split and Branko Ijas from Energetica Marketing in Zagreb, we met in Dubrovnik in the spring of 2000 and discussed the ideas, the topic, the scope, format of a possible event. Naim could not come, but in the next few months the concept and the title was crystallized with a major input from Naim. A number of junior colleagues joined: Neven Dujic, Nikola Ružinski, and Goran Kračić from the University of Zagreb, Adam Bar Cohen from Minneapolis, Maria Graca Carvalho from Lisbon, Gian Pietro Celata from Rome, Andreas Carter from Hamburg, Luis Serra from Zaragoza, Lene Vidal from CEA Grenoble. And the SDEWES was born with its first conference held in Dubrovnik in June 2002. As we all well know, the event has emerged into one of the most prominent, influential and widely recognized global gathering of scientists, engineers and experts of varied profiles from all over the world, active in and concerned with the destiny of our planet, especially of its major commodities, energy, water and the environment. I'm convinced that I share view of all, that its success should be credited primarily to the enormous, dedicated and enduring effort of the chairman, Professor Neven Dujic. His co-chairs, members of the organizing committee and the International Scientific Advisory Board, and last but not least to the staff of the conference series and the SDEWES Center. I hereby express my sincere congratulations and appreciation to all of them. And of course, a tribute and gratitude go to late Professor Naim Afgan, whose vision, professional integrity, and above all, his enthusiasm and energy will long be remembered and will serve as inspiration to emerging generations to strive for the fulfillment of his sustainability and resilience goals. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all a very fruitful, enjoyable and fulfilling virtual meeting. Thank you.
I would like to thank Professor Hanjelic. Professor Afgan, during his research career at Vinča Institute, was also a professor at the University of Zagreb. That's where I first met him. I was a student at that time. He would come to Zagreb, give several lectures during the week, and then go for a few weeks back to Belgrade. I would like to invite now the head of the Department of Energy and Environment, Professor Zvonimir Guzovic, to give an address about his experiences with Professor Afgan working at the University of Zagreb. Zvonimir, are you here with us?
It's okay.
Yes, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Neven. Dear participants of fourth Southeast Europe conference. I will talk about work of Professor Afgan at the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering and Naval Architecture of the University of Zagreb. Professor Afgan worked at the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering and Naval Architecture of the University of Zagreb in the period of 1981 to 1992 as a full professor at the Department of Power Engineering. He gave lectures in the courses steam boilers and thermal power plants at graduate study and courses energy process and thermal measurement at postgraduate study. The work of Professor Afgan at the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering and Naval Architecture as a world-recognized scientist and expert was very important for all employers and especially for young scientists at the beginning of their research careers. He brought new ideas from fields of heat and mass transfer, CFD, expert systems, and finally sustainable development. He loved to work with young researchers, engineers, and students. So at the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering and Naval Architecture was a mentor in the preparation of 3 doctoral dissertations and 4 master theses. As General Secretary of the world-recognized International Center for Heat and Mass Transfer, advocate for participation in conference of scientists from the field, from the faculty. And after leaving Zagreb, stayed in contact with the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering and Naval Architecture. He established cooperation with Instituto Superior Técnico Lisbon. The result of this collaboration are the SDEWES conferences, which are organized Faculty of Mechanical Engineering and Naval Architecture, University of Zagreb, and Instituto Superior Técnico Lisbon. Personally, I had the opportunity to work with Professor Afgan as assistant at the Department of Power Engineering and later as secretary of the SDEWES conferences. Early in my career, at a certain way, directed my scientific research work in the field of heat and mass transfer at steam and gas turbines and heat pipes. All of us at the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering and Naval Architecture, University of Zagreb, Professor Afgan will remain in memory as a great teacher, world-recognized scientist, intellectual, and humanist. For all, thank you very much, Professor Afgan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zvonimir, on the kind words. Final phase of the career of Professor Afgan, he passed in Instituto Superior Técnico in Lisbon, together with me part of the time. But I would like to invite now Professor Maria Graça Carvalho, who was the head of the group, the head of department of Applied Thermodynamics, where we both worked. She is now also a member of European Parliament, and she is the chair of International Scientific Committee of SDEWES. Please.
Dear colleagues, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start to thanking Professor Neven Dwij for organizing this session dedicated to Professor Naim Afgan and for having invited me to deliver this short presentation on the chapter of his life. After learning about Professor Afgan's contribution as scientific advisor at the Boris Kridik Institute of Nuclear Science in Belgrade in Vinca, and as Professor of Mechanical Engineering and Chair in Energy Engineering at University of Zagreb, and as Secretary General of the International Center of Heat and Mass Transfer. I have the pleasure to tell you about this period that is spent at Technical University of Lisbon, my university in Portugal. I first encountered Professor Afgan in the framework of the conference organized by the International Center of Heat and Mass Transfer that he helped to find and that I attend quite regularly. Actually, our field of expertise were quite the same, heat and mass transfer, thermal engineers. So it's natural that our collaboration became regular over time. In the early 90s, former Yugoslavia was going through huge transformation and troublous times. So many researchers and scientists went to look for other institutions in the West, in Europe, in the West. This was, for example, the case also with Professor Jan Halic that went to Erlangen, Nuremberg as a guest professor, and was the same with Professor Afgan, that in 1993 he was invited by my University of Lisbon, to get a UNESCO chair on sustainable development, and he went to Lisbon. He was known for being a great professor, both with the postgraduate students and in his researchers. But one of his main priorities was always to communicate and to have appropriate platforms to disseminate his results of research. He liked to organize conferences, disseminate outcomes, writing scientific papers and books. During the time that he spent with us, he continued having a crucial role in organizing conferences, such as the International Conference on New and Renewable Energy Technologies for Sustainable Development. We organized one in Lisbon in 1998, in Madeira 2000, Açores 2002, and Évora 2004. With a clear passion for writing and transposing views to papers, we wrote many papers in international journals. I take this opportunity to highlight some of the works that we have written together. We have written 2 papers, one on the sustainable assessment method for energy systems, indicator criterion decision-making procedure, that we published in 2000, and quality sustainability and indicators in energy systems that we published in 2007. We also worked in several special issues and books that were a result of the Conference on the New and Renewable Energy Technologies for Sustainable Development that were published in 2002, 4, and 7. The number of articles were very high that we wrote together in all these areas of energy systems, sustainability, evaluation of energy resources. Professor Afgan was also essential when it comes to open up new avenue research cooperation and allowing a more systematic collaboration between the Western Europe and the Eastern part of Europe. Like in the IST, you open up our collaboration with the Balkans, with Russia, and even with Turkey. Europe was very different, and Portugal was very different at the time. So it was very important, this collaboration. It was also crucial to attract students and research people from the Balkans to go to our university. And for example, in my group, I had several of them. One of the examples was Professor Naim Afgan, and I could say that his start there is a very distinguished career that he has today. Later on, my university gave the degree of Emeritus Professor to Professor Afgan. So I think that this initiative of SEDEWES, that he also was something that Professor Afgan initiated, it's very good. We are paying a tribute to all his career. I'm personal and professional, very grateful that our paths have crossed. Professor Afgan paved the way that is now for those scientists and researchers that the work is many presenting here in the SEDEWES conference. I want to thank you for your attention, and I wish you a very successful conference. And I really regret that I'm not in Sarajevo with you. I visited Sarajevo long time ago, and I didn't have the opportunity to go back, and I would like to go back. I visited Sarajevo when Professor Ian Halic was mayor of Sarajevo, and I remember it very well, and I have very good memories from that visit. So I hope that the health situation in the world will allow me to visit the beautiful city of Sarajevo once again in the near future. So I wish you all a very successful conference. Thank you.
I would like to thank all the speakers for remembering Professor Naim Afgan. And in the end, I would like to say thank you, Professor Afgan, for helping us open our views, bringing us new ideas, and making science really exciting process. I'm really honored that I worked with you. Thank you.